After a long, vague dream, the unusually real feeling of weightlessness struck suddenly, followed by a sharp pain that spread to the limbs and bones. The sound of calling over and over again came from my ears, familiar and reassuring. Slowly opening his eyes, Webster Burke's face gradually cleared. His eyes were dark and bloodshot, and a layer of fresh stubble appeared on his chin, giving him the appearance of a haggard beauty. Brother, why did you get back? He tugged at the corners of his mouth, leaving only a wry smile. You, crying, subconsciously hold his hand, because in my memory, he rarely cried, and the last time was when his mother died. But at this moment, I could clearly see large tears rolling down his jaw. He turned his face sideways and wiped his other hand on his face. No, the red tip of his nose and tear stains were still visible, but the man's mouth was as hard as he could be. You're really stiff now, and you won't tell me when you're sick? Webster Burke feigned annoyance in his hoarse voice, but his hands carefully tucked a cushion behind my back. It's just a little cold. I laughed softly at his fuss, but my heart was warm. Webster Burke sat there with his back straight, didn't say anything, just stared at me in distraction. The deep and intense gaze made people's hearts palpitate. It's only been a few days since we last met, but it seems like a lifetime has passed. Brother, I frowned and whispered to him. He finally came back to his senses, raised the corners of his mouth vigorously, and said slowly, You've been sleeping for almost 2 days. What? I just remember waking up in the morning feeling a little sore and my head was groggy, so I took cold medicine and fell asleep again. Look at the clock on the wall, and look out the dark window. I couldn't help but wonder why this cold was so bad that it had knocked me down as a strong and healthy woman. Oh, I'm hungry. My brother made you porridge. Webster Burke pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and stood up. As soon as I heard about eating, I felt a little more energetic and quickly added, Don't forget to put some chili sauce you made. The patient can only eat lightly. His tone was gentle, but not refutable. Seeing that I wrinkled his features in protest, he raised the corners of his lips slightly, patted my cheek gently like a doter. Good girl Tilda. It's okay. Luckily, he turned fast enough not to see that I couldn't suppress the flush that flew up my cheeks. Shame and heartbeat are always in fierce confrontation. Although it is rational and emotional every time, the heartbeat spring breeze blows and grows. My name is Mildred Bernal, and my brother's name is Webster Burke. The surname is different, but it is a family. But there is no blood relationship because Webster Burke is adopted. My parents tried many things but couldn't get pregnant. He adopted Webster Burke, and 3 years later, gave birth to me. I took my mother's surname, and he took my father's surname. Later, my mother died when I was in elementary school due to illness. My father went to Xinjiang to support his career, stayed for a few years and was promoted, and was transferred to work in the next province. He had a home in the local area again. My brother and I have been living in an old house in our hometown, and we depend on each other for our lives. Webster Burke chose a local university for me. When I was a junior in high school, he bought a small broken car and went back and forth between home and school every day, taking care of my food and daily life. My brother is the best man in the world, and I, on the other hand, am a sister who has a bad heart for him. Here comes the porridge. Webster Burke walked in with a blue plaid apron and a dinner plate, a gentle glow on his body. Aren't you going to eat at the table? As soon as I lifted the quilt, my legs stretched out, but my brother pressed them back to the bed. No, brother feeds you. Yes. I was so frightened that I exclaimed. He sat on the edge of the bed with a small bowl, his eyelashes lowered, scooped up a spoonful of porridge and blew. I've heard that the exam month for medical students is particularly perverted. Isn't my brother so stressed that he is going crazy with calmness? He has a cleanliness fetish, and when I eat potato chips on the couch, he has to chase after me and clean up after my ass. Now, how can I eat in bed? Open your mouth. The soft sound was like a feather sliding down to the ear, tickling. Webster Burke doesn't seem to do anything bad, and an ordinary bowl of white porridge can be made with a fragrant aroma. My stomach was beating as if it was receiving a signal. With a bite of the stomach, along the throat, the entire 5 organs are warm and comfortable. Is it delicious? He tilted his head to look at me, like a nervous child waiting for recognition. I lowered my eyes, pursed my lips and snickered. It's delicious. I reached for the bowl, a little desperate to swallow the delicacy in 3 seconds. He smiled and slapped my hand away, patiently and persistently insisted on blowing the porridge cold, and then fed it to me one bite at a time. He smiled so beautifully that I could see it. Ah, Tilda. His eyes were bright, as if I were a 3-year-old. My ears were a little hot, and I looked away and concentrated on the porridge he had fed me. Luckily, I have Webster Burke's older brother. It's a pity that he can only be my brother. Another bowl. He hunched over and naturally scraped the rice grains off the corners of my mouth with his fingers. No, I don't eat it. I'm full. My heart tightened instantly, and I subconsciously tensed my back and kept my distance from him. But the touch left by the fingertips at the corners of his mouth, and the good smell that belongs to him, make me flutter. Unfortunately, I can't control myself from being impressed, just as I can't control my heart from judging this deformed feeling. I've been with Webster Burke since I was born. We've done so many intimate things. He had changed my diaper, bathed me, and played together under the covers. Even the sanitary napkins at Monarch and the small vest, with chest pads during development were bought for me. Until one day in adolescence, in an ordinary contact, a strange feeling fell from the sky like thunder. Abnormal physical reactions, surging girls' thoughts, can deceive others, but can't deceive yourself. What was once a close relationship suddenly became awkward. A touch will turn into a sleepless taboo, a switch for charming thoughts. And Webster Burke will always be a good brother with integrity, calmness, and a sense of boundaries. Even in the summer, he doesn't dress casually at home like someone else's brother. I know that Webster Burke will always be the most sincere brother and sister to me, affectionate and undevoid. In any case, family affection must go further than love. Someone seems to be coming from outside. A few moments later, Webster Burke walked into my room again. Who's coming? Webster Burke's eyes flashed with impatience. I don't know. He came here to deliver the assessment papers. Looking at the sheets of paper full of answers, I slapped my thigh. Today is June the 12th, and I was supposed to go back to school to get my scores. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's have a good rest today. He turned around and tucked the sheets of paper into a book on my desk, and placed them upright. I was excited. The answer was right in front of me. How could I endure it until tomorrow? So she tiptoed behind him, ready to take a shallow look. He suddenly turned around, propped his hands on the table, and looked down at me condescendingly. One was caught off guard, and I fell into his arms, hitting my jaw with pain. He seemed to be in a good mood. His thin lips curled slightly, and his slender fingertips dotted on my nose. No, listen, talk. I blushed and silenced, speechless. How this dead heart is pounding endlessly. The muffled ringing of the mobile phone in the quilt blew away the warm air that did not fit the identity. I quickly struggled out of Webster Burke's arms and ran to answer the phone. When I first sent you the answer, I heard your brother say that you were sick. Are you okay now? On the other end of the line was Maxwell Scott, my junior and high school classmate. Well, it's much better. I glanced up at my brother, who knew Maxwell Scott and lied to me that he didn't know him. Webster Burke didn't dodge my gaze, but his face was a little ugly. The assessment time is a week, and then I start to apply. You don't have to worry, just get some rest. On the other end of the phone, Maxwell Scott said unhurriedly, when you're better, let's go to the escape room. The new one. How about going tomorrow? I feel like I'm fine. As soon as I heard that I was going to go out, I immediately became excited. That new store is said to be scary and exciting. No, you can't. A deep voice rang out, and Webster Burke's face was as dark as something. Seeing that I didn't give up, he added, you're not fit to go to that kind of closed place right now. How doesn't it fit? I'm fine, and now I'm as light as a swallow. I crossed my back and dismissed his argument to his face. Since the end of the college entrance examination, I have been staying at home, and I am almost free. Then I'll form a game. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. I hung up the phone and smiled at Webster Burke. Brother, don't worry. Trust your sister's strong body. I thought he would go back to school tomorrow to review, but he raised his eyebrows. Then I'll go with you. No, don't you have to prepare for your final exam? Kung Fu is in normal times, not worse than this hour and a half. Well, I can't find a reason to refuse him either. You don't know Maxwell Scott, by the way. Oh, I remember. Is it an ordinary friend, who sent you a love letter before? He deliberately lengthened his voice, and his expression was extremely unbeaten. I grinned hard. HMPH. He was embarrassed to say that before I could open the so-called love letter, he confiscated it on the grounds that junior high school students should focus on their studies. Brother, you should rest early. I'm going to clean up and go to sleep. He was silent, staring at my face for a long time, so long that I felt a little uncomfortable. Mildred Bernal, when you sign up, let my brother study where to take the exam with you. Okay. The next day, I, Webster Burke, Maxwell Scott, and a few of my high school classmates met up in the backroom shop. Webster Burke and Maxwell Scott have not been very good at dealing with each other, and neither of them has a good face for each other. The receptionist smiled and told Webster Burke that the secret room we wanted to play needed 11 people to open. There are still 2 people left, and we will see if we can accept teaming up with strangers. It's also a coincidence. At this time, 2 beautiful and familiar young ladies walked into the store. Webster Burke. Among them, a girl with a baby face with bangs pointed at my brother with a look of surprise. My sister is there too. I'm your sister Nellie Kent. She smiled and nodded at me. Then I remembered that her name was Nellie Kent, a classmate of Webster Burke, and she was the schoolgirl of our school at the time. She is dressed up delicately and cutely, and she looks better than she did in high school. She seemed to know Webster Burke well, and the 2 of them chatted shoulder to shoulder at the front desk. She would also tug at the corner of my brother's clothes and say, I really want to play with this, but it's a big fear. You're going to protect me? I'm a little scared. Her voice matched her appearance very well, sweet and gentle. James, my high school tablemate, leaned into my ear and whispered, don't you think this beautiful woman is a good match for Webster Burke? A Cowlin flower, a cheerful and sweet girl. I kind of like this pair. Slur, smack. Even though they rolled their eyes 100 times in anger, it was undeniable that it was indeed quite pleasing for these 2 to stop there. I heard that they are still in a university. I'll have a sister-in-law in a few days. My heart was a little sour, but all I could do was look away. I've always been possessive of Webster Burke. When the love was not opened, I was afraid that other children would snatch my brother's favor from me, so I stuck to him every day. Later, when the relationship between brother and sister deteriorated, whenever I saw a girl confessing to my brother, or even talking and laughing, it would sting me. But as a younger sister, what position does it have to prevent him from socializing normally or falling in love? So in this matter, I developed an ostrich mentality. As long as you bury your head in the sand, you won't be sad if you don't look at it. Webster Burke is a man of the moment everywhere, and has a lot of lethality. The title of School Grass was not enough to encapsulate his influence, and he was called the Dingy Shen Needle of the school back then. Since he was in junior high school, his photo has been hanging on the school's admissions brochure and official website. Many people come here to study, and they do so because of him. Half of the girls in my class envy me and want to be Webster Burke's sister. The other half of the girls want to be my sister-in-law. Every time he waited for me at the door of my class, it would cause a small commotion, and even many girls deliberately stepped on a chance encounter. For so long, my mentality has become more proficient. Under the guidance of the guide, a group of us walked to the horror-themed Chamber 5. Everyone put on blindfolds as required, and walked forward in the darkness led by the guide. By the time I was instructed to take off my blindfolds, Maxwell Scott and James and I were locked up in a room that had been set up as a wedding room. There was a shrill scream outside. In the chaos I heard Nellie Kent shout, Webster Burke, I'm afraid. Maxwell Scott ran up to me, pinched his throat and parroted, I'm scared too. Please protect me. Speechlessly, I pointed to the combination lock next to the tight wooden door and said, get me the code. The 3 of us stinkers quickly found a way to open the door. The password is correct. Why didn't you open the door? James thought over his shoulders. There's something under the pillow. I was sitting on the happy bed resting, and when I looked down and saw a post, it seems that someone needs to pretend to be a bride, wait for the door to open, and sit in the sedan chair at the door to get married. Damn, this is terrifying. James was so frightened that he began to curse. And this is a solo mission. Then, I'll go Tilda. Maxwell Scott's face turned pale, and he looked like he was going to die. You'd better rest. I took out my Chinese bridal dress from the box under the dresser, and began to put it on myself. Maxwell Scott, who looks babbling, is actually more timid than anyone else. A grimace suddenly appeared in the mirror just now, and he plopped and knelt down. As soon as I put on my hijab, the door creaked open. A big red sedan chair stopped at the door. We stood in 3 rows, stunned by what we saw. Has the secret room developed like this now? It's scary. Please don't go. James' voice trembled, and his hands gripped me tightly. Silly boy, it's all fake. Don't be afraid. I'm a tank. I patted James' hand and got into the sedan chair. I really wasn't too scared. Maybe it was a big ghost movie with Webster Burke that he saw as a child. Maxwell Scott, you take James and join the army. As soon as I finished speaking, the sedan chair suddenly started on its own. In the dark, the sedan chair circled for a long time before stopping. I lifted the curtain of the door, and in front of me was an ancestral hall with a hidden gate, and the ghost fire inside was lit green. I quickly completed 2 small tasks in the ancestral hall, and the reward was to provide 2 clues to my companions, who were decrypting in other rooms. Just when I thought the mission was over, an eerie electronic voice suddenly sounded in the room. Please take your seat. The wedding ceremony is about to begin. At this time, all the tablets in the ancestral hall began to fall forward automatically, making a loud noise, and even the ground seemed to be shaking. I took a defensive stance and looked around. There was a red dot in the southwest direction that caught my attention. When I walked over, I found that there was an extra coffin in this room. Do you probably need me to lie down in it? I thought as I nimbly climbed in, and covered the coffin board with my hands and feet. As soon as I closed my eyes, and was about to take a rest, a joke suddenly came from my ear. Hey, bride, you're pretty immersed. I don't know if I was scared or what. My heart pounded. Lifting the red hijab, Webster Burke smiled brightly as he put his hands on the coffin. Brother, are you alone? Yes, they're still solving the problem. I'll see what you're doing. No. Why are you squeezing in? I exclaimed in small exclamation, leaning back to make room for him. He neatly lifted the coffin board and slipped into the coffin. In the next second, the 2 of us were in the small coffin, in the quiet ancestral hall with green light. Facing each other. The familiar smell of laundry detergent and his warm breath hit my face, and I felt like my ears were almost ripe. Juan, if they come in out of the blue, I'm so nervous that I can't even speak well. No, it won't. Webster Burke was squeezed to the point that his voice was a little erratic. Then you don't have to protect Sister Nellie Kent? I asked in a whisper. He looked at me deeply. Have you forgotten that your brother has night blindness? You didn't take the initiative to protect me, and you just left with others, which made me feel cold. He deliberately lowered his voice, and there was some complaint in his tone. I pursed my lips in embarrassment until I couldn't hold back and exhaled softly. My hands are numb, Tilda. The next second, Webster Burke took me directly into his arms. One hand rests under my head, and the other hand takes my wrist and rests it on his chest. The arms that had been curled together were finally stretched. I breathed a sigh of relief and let the uncomfortable tingling sensation flow through my body like a stream of water. Oh, is it better? His voice grew hoarse. He grabbed my hand sideways, and my gaze was forced to stop at his Adam's apple. I swallowed and lowered my eyes. As far as I could see his sexy collarbone. It's not better. His sister is about to leave this beautiful world because of her heartbeat. However, the beating of his heart, that passed down the palm of his hand was equally fast and powerful. So Webster Burke's heartbeat. Why is it beating so fast? There were some voices outside the door. Probably a large army coming. Brother Tilda. Well, I'm leaving. The space in the coffin has become larger again, but I am a little unaccustomed to lying here. Later in the plot, I have been in the fugue, and I don't know what kind of story I have experienced when I get out of the secret room. In the evening, Webster Burke went back to school because he had an exam tomorrow morning. Webster Burke didn't return for the next 2 days. Nellie Kent found my home in a rare way. As soon as she was about to invite her in, she went straight to the point. I like your brother. I was a little surprised, but I expected it. But Webster Burke probably doesn't want to be in a relationship because of you. I frowned, a little confused. I know you two have lived alone since childhood, and Webster Burke may be used to being a parent, but you also have to think about your brother. What the hell are you going to say? Her tone was not friendly, even reproachful. I mean, you men and women are different, and you should keep your distance. She clasped her hands to her chest, wore high heels, and looked at me imposingly. How I get along with him, it's not your turn to be commented on by an outsider. I replied lightly. You're about to go to college. Don't encroach on your brother's life anymore. Hey, I think you're a failure to confess. So you started looking for reasons all over the world. It's very simple. He just doesn't like you. Her pupils trembled slightly, and she stared at me for a long time before she spoke. You have a crush on your brother, right? Do you know it's indecent? It's disgusting. Later you will kill him. My heart trembled, and I said, nonsense. I wouldn't kill him. It's pathetic that you don't look like this. With that, I closed the door despite her swearing. Actually, when she said it, I was a little scared. What if, I thought I had a well-hidden like, and Webster Burke found out? What if he starts hating me? I can't afford to lose him. That night, I had a rare insomnia, got up with dark circles under his eyes, and applied for 4 military academies in the south and north of the world, as well as a flight academy. Brother, are you done with the exam? I was lying on the couch bored when I saw Webster Burke come in with a big bag, and a small bag pushing the door open. Well, but there's an exam in a few days. He wore a light blue shirt, with a slightly open neckline, revealing a white neck, which made the whole person cold and straight. I put on my slippers, and helped him with his things. He went back to his room to change into a vest, and went straight to the kitchen to start making lunch. Mildred Bernal, tie my apron for me. Okay. I walked up behind him, with the completed volunteer form. Brother, I've signed up. You can sign it for me. After handing Webster Burke the volunteer form, he bowed his head and tied an apron for him. What is this? He put down the food in his hand and turned to face me, and a cold breath came to his face. I haven't tied it yet. My knot was halfway through when I looked up and my heart shook. His fingertips were red and he pinched the volunteer form, feeling that the paper was about to turn into a commercial fan, and go away with the wind in the next second. What is this? I didn't tell you. You have to discuss with me when you volunteer. He lowered his hand and still held his watch, looking at me with his chin tilted slightly, as if he was trying to suppress his anger, as if waiting for me to give him an explanation. I peeked at him, and then quickly lowered my head, a little anxious. Brother, I've already thought about it. After a long silence, I held back such a sentence. Good. I disagree. As he spoke, he tore my volunteer form to shreds. I froze as I watched countless pieces of paper fall feebly from his hands onto the ground. Webster Burke tossed his apron and slammed the door. It all happened so fast that I couldn't even understand why he was angry. Is it necessary just to volunteer? Even though there is an element of wanting to keep a distance from my brother when applying for a military school, it is also carefully considered. I crouched down, picked up the volunteer pieces one by one, and dialed the phone number of the high school homeroom teacher. In the afternoon, I went back to school to get a new volunteer form, and the head teacher didn't ask me why, but kept giving me Amway University. Oh, he felt that with my grades, I could try to hit the top universities, so that I should not be in a hurry to make a decision and think more. By the time I got home from school, it was already dark. The house was quiet, and no one seemed to be there. As a result, when they got closer, they found Webster Burke lying on the couch, sleeping in a mess. The gray half-sleeved hem rolls up high, revealing a flat, firm, well-defined lower abdomen. I leaned over and sniffed. A faint smell of wine. Webster Burke looked like he had been cooked. His skin flushed pink. Alcohol allergy and drinking. You're still a doctor. The living room is sometimes blown by the wind through the hall, and it is cold. I walked briskly back to my room, and got him a small quilt to put on my stomach. I don't know how much I drank, and I slept so deeply. I quietly looked at the sleeping person with my hands on my cheeks. I only dare to say in my diary, my brother's appearance is my ideal type. Since I was a child, I haven't gotten tired of watching it for so many years. Fingers ran down his superior brow bone, resting on the two red lips. There's something going on in his heart. If he kisses him, he probably won't wake up. Childhood memories suddenly popped up in my head. When I was in elementary school, bitter dramas were particularly popular on TV, and the male and female protagonists loved each other to death. I've always wondered, Why do you have to kiss when you're in love? It seems that with this kiss, the relationship between the two can be qualitatively changed. Maybe there's something unique about kissing, like eating a popsicle, satisfying and happy, so I wanted to experience the joy of being an adult for myself. One day, as soon as my brother entered the door from school, I trotted over with a smile on my face, and helped put my schoolbag and slippers away. Seeing that he was still sweating on his face after playing, he quickly found a small fan to fan him. Did you make a mistake? Webster Burke was clearly uncomfortable with my doglegs. I smiled and hooked my hand to make him lower his head. Brother, close your eyes. Webster Burke was puzzled but obedient. I felt like I was just over 1.5 meters. Webster Burke jumped to more than 1.7 meters. I couldn't reach his mouth on tiptoe, so I put my hands around his neck and pressed my lips to him. It only has a soft and wet touch, like eating jelly without sweetness. When I was a child, I didn't know much, but I only knew that TV series couldn't deceive people, so I took a bite of it. Webster Burke grunted in pain. He pressed his hands against my face one by one and pulled me off his lips. Probably angry, he looked at me for a long time with a red face, but he didn't say a word. After a closer look, I realized that it was not light or heavy just now, and it bit his lip. He opened his lips slightly. The water around his lips was shiny, and there was a trace of blood on his lower lip, like the amazing vampire Duke in the anime. After carefully interrogating me about the reason for the attack on him, Webster Burke was deeply helpless, and only left one sentence: Mildred Bernal, if you watch those TV series in the future, I'll throw the TV away. Then he went back to the bedroom in a rage. Before closing the door, as if he remembered something, he strode back. You promise me that I won't ask anyone else to do such a thing, otherwise, I'll kill him. Under his strong coercion, I was forced to raise 3 fingers and swear at the lamp. Watching Webster Burke get drunk and unconscious, this is the second time in my life that I have had the opportunity to sneak up on him, and if I miss it, I will never have it again. The inner warrior woke up and cried out loudly, when will you stay if you don't kiss at this time? TV series won't lie to you. Don't leave regrets in life. This is your favorite brother's lips. He will never know anyway. I threw my mind on my shoulder, completely losing my mind, and slowly approached Webster Burke's face with my neck twisted. His taste and softness are close at hand. The moment the lips and teeth met, the slightest electric current burst between the lip flaps, and then in every inch of the body, the trembling went straight to the heavenly spirit cover. The TV series really didn't lie to me. It's just that this kiss is coming to an end. The warmth was fleeting, and the moment I got up, my heavenly spirit cover seemed to be so cool that it was lifted with great strength. Because the 4 eyes are facing each other. Yes, Webster Burke opened his eyes with such depth. His cheeks were crimson, and his eyes, which had been clear in the past, were now dull, and his hand was pressed against the back of my neck, and the hot palm almost melted my skin. Sister, why did you stop? I gasped and struggled to straighten up, but he was caught in his arms and couldn't move. Listen to me. I was horrified, and all I could think of was one sentence: Mildred Bernal, you're finished. Brother, no, don't get me wrong. I whimpered and lay on top of him, tears streaming uncontrollably. I really can't afford to lose Webster Burke. He gently pinned the broken hair stuck to my face behind my ears, and wiped away the tears. Does Mildred Bernal like his brother? I closed my eyes, and said in a nasal voice, yes, I like Mildred Bernal too. He spoke in a brisk tone, as if he were asking me what I was going to eat for the evening. I lifted my eyelids to look at him, but his gaze was burning and very sultry. I know, I whispered back. You don't know. You're completely stunned by him. I don't want to be your brother anymore. I was suffocated, grabbed his collar with both hands, and there was only despair in my eyes. Brother, you don't want me anymore. He shook his head slightly, word by word, as if to engrave the words in his heart. I want to be your lover. His eyes were deep, as if he wanted to see everything in detail, but his face was too red. The thoughts in your head are flying. He wants to be my lover. Did he just say that? There's probably been so much going on today that my brain is a little down. Brother, you've drunk too much. I didn't really know how to respond to him, so I thought I'd just get the deal done. After all, how can what you say when you are drunk count? I'm sober. He sees through your thoughts. So, how do you prove it? Later, I'll show you my diary. The joy under his eyes and brows could not be concealed, and his knuckles rubbed against his skin. Why can't you watch it now? No, there's more important things to do. Webster Burke's hand clasped firmly on my back and jerked over top of me, his breath coming to my ears. His clear voice was out of tune, and his muttering made his body tremble. What I just did, I have to continue. The hot lips poured down, and the world was instantly small enough for Webster Burke alone. Love lingers between lips and teeth. Suddenly I had a flash of inspiration on the clouds, and I was lucky that the person I loved happened to love me too. A drop of water fell on my face and slid down to the corners of my mouth, giving it a slightly bitter taste. I blinked and saw Webster Burke's wet lashes. He cupped my face and took a bite, as if to punish me for being distracted. Webster Burke muttered my name as he whispered my name as if in a dream. Mildred Bernal. Mildred Bernal. Yes, after many years, Webster Burke and I have become a relationship where we can take a shower and sleep together. It seems that nothing has changed, but everything has changed. In the morning, as soon as I opened my eyes and found myself in my arms by Webster Burke, my body began to stiffen again because of the damage. Ashamed. Don't pretend to be asleep. I see you open. I blushed and burrowed my head into his shoulder socket, not wanting to see the narrow smile in his eyes. I've made you soup to comfort you. Then, a sweet kiss fell on the forehead. I rubbed my waist and thought to myself that I really needed to be comforted. Once again, I was honored to have the opportunity to eat in bed. Webster Burke set up a small table for me, and even tried to feed me. I cruelly refused. My back hurts, not my hands. I can eat it myself. Okay, next time my brother will pay attention. Stop. I was embarrassed to cover my ears with my hands and toes, digging at the castle under the covers. In the past, it was one thing to have a crush, but now it's another thing. I think I'm probably going to have to get used to it for a while. Brother, what are we going to do in the future? I'm going to go to Noah Burke for these 2 days to dissolve the adoption relationship, so that we are no longer brother and sister legally speaking. I nodded, feeling a little heavy in my heart. He sat down beside me, rubbed my tousled hair, and whispered softly, "Rest assured, my brother will be by Mildred Bernal's side for the rest of his life. Only when the brother-sister relationship is dissolved can you become my wife." His cheeks were so hot that they were about to explode, so he could only shyly tease, "Who wants to be your wife?" Since Webster Burke tore up my volunteer form last time, the application has been put on hold. I'm running out of time now, and the last day of the volunteer deadline is Webster Burke's birthday. At night, the two of us nestled on the couch to watch ghost movies, and after the evil ghost appeared, I finally couldn't help but ask the question that had been worrying about me for a few days. "Brother, why don't you let me go to the military academy? It's too dangerous. I don't want to see you hurt. After all, your brother is old." Looking at his appearance, I played, took off his glasses, and rounded and flattened his face. "You're still very tender. How can you talk like an old man?" The smile in his eyes grew, and his slender hand climbed up my arm, eventually clasping his fingers. "Wouldn't it be nice to change to a normal university that is closer, even if it's for me?" His lips opened and closed, and I had no intention of listening anymore, so I turned my head to the side and kissed him. A room with horror on one side and a warm and extreme love on the other. Maybe summer is coming, and it's so hot that my brother cooks naked and wearing an apron at home every day. Although his muscle lines are beautiful and easy to touch, but I'm still a little hard to accept that the original, old-fashioned, has become the current frivolous appearance. Sure me, it's devastating, both physically and mentally. So, look at the nose and look at the heart, and look straight at the TV. You don't look at him. He comes to make trouble for you. One will come to drink water, and the other will come and clean up. Brother, you're blocking me from watching TV. I stuck my neck out 3 miles. Then he snorted heavily, walked over to the couch, lifted me up, carried me like a sack on his shoulder, went into his room, and threw me on the bed. I rubbed my stomach and was about to protest, but he bullied up, "I can't stop you from watching TV by dressing like this." The TV series is good. Webster Burke's handsome eyebrows furrowed, and a few chuckles escaped from his throat. "What about me?" After a few tosses, looking at his smug eyes, I reluctantly complimented. You're much better than TV. Webster Burke's birthday finally arrived, and I made a birthday cake for him. You drew this little pig. You're so good. Webster Burke's eyes were fixed on the cake in front of him, as if he were looking at some rare treasure. I don't know if to talk about it. In fact, I drew you. I pursed my lips and smiled a little embarrassedly. It's okay. I have other gifts for you. You're sure to like it. I hurried to remedy it, and then sneakily took out a box. I have a gift for you, too. Webster Burke handed me a box as well. My eyes widened. But there are also gifts for birthdays. We opened the gifts in our hands at the same time, which were 2 volunteer sheets. Seeing the content on the volunteer form, a sour and astringent nasal cavity swelled up, and his voice was choked. Are you going to choose to be a defense engineer for my brother? He laughed out loud as he looked at the engineering university on the volunteer list. You agree with me to enroll in military school. My first choice is to be a pilot. Before torn up the volunteer form on all the schools. Fill in the majors. He remembers. Webster Burke took me into his arms. It's hateful to deprive my sister of her dreams, but you have to promise your brother that you must pay attention to safety, and you must protect yourself as soon as possible in case of emergencies. My brother will always be waiting for you at home. Don't abandon my brother. I lifted my swollen face and nodded for some reason. His eyes were obscure, and a flash of sadness flashed across his eyes. Life in the military school is very fulfilling, so full that you can't go home for a few days, all year round. My phone wasn't always available, so Webster Burke and I were constantly disconnected. One summer, I finished training just in time for Webster Burke's birthday show. I secretly poked and poked to surprise him, and at that time I could only buy a ticket for the green train, so I sat for 13 hours. When the hard seat returned to his hometown, I also secretly bought a small cake and a handful of crushed ice blue roses, and went to the hospital where he interned to wait for him. At that time, he was on emergency room shifts, and was on duty for 2 nights in a row. He was wearing crumpled white half-sleeves, and a long beard on his face, but he was still the most handsome in the crowd. I will always remember the look in his eyes when he saw me in the hospital lobby, a mixture of surprise, disbelief and grievance. He walked straight towards me, bringing a gust of wind that smelled of his brother, and then I was held tightly in his arms. I haven't seen each other for a year and 3 months. Let my brother hug me for a while. He pressed his face to my ear, and his voice was suppressed. Uncontrollable thoughts. Every time I go home, the first thing my brother does is give me a full body checkup. Confess leniently, resist strictly. You take the initiative to explain first. Webster Burke tucked me in a chair, condescending and domineering. He had just taken a shower and shaved his beard, and his whole body was fragrant and tender, and I just wanted to stick to him quickly. I'm completely healthy. I stretched out my arms to climb up his neck. And what's going on in your chest? He flashed and didn't get caught in me. I looked down into my clothes, and there was indeed some bruising. Well, the flight was overloaded during low-altitude maneuvers, and the belt broke. But it's a super small injury, and it doesn't hurt at all. Trust me, baby Tilda, I'm very experienced in coaxing Webster Burke now, so I'll just pick what he likes to hear. Sure enough, when he heard me call him baby, he unconsciously hooked the corners of his mouth. Really, I hugged him. Baby, I miss you so much. Webster Burke's breathing grew rapid, and his eyes were as deep as ink. I stood up and tiptoed to find him with my lips, and he threw his arms around my waist in response to his enthusiasm. Now it's okay. My brother has become a brother-in-law. When I was 26 years old, we had a seaside wedding in the presence of a few relatives and friends. Webster Burke did the preparation alone, and I only had 2 days off to come back for a wedding. And then I was going to train in the South China Sea. It was a test flight mission of the new aircraft, and I was the only girl among the carrier-based aircraft pilots selected by the country. At the wedding, Webster Burke, known as the most stable right hand, put on a ring for me with a trembling face, and solemnly made a vow. I, Webster Burke, would like to live and die with Mildred Bernal for the rest of my life. After the wedding, I didn't even have time to go home, so I had to go straight to the airport after changing my wedding dress in the car. Webster Burke took off his suit jacket, wore only his shirt and tie, and sat in the main driver and drove quietly. Seeing that I finally finished processing the work news, and put down my phone, He slowly spoke. Do you remember what my brother asked you when you signed up for the job? I nodded. Be safe in everything. In case of emergencies, you must protect yourself as soon as possible. What else? He glanced at me, in the rearview mirror. I rolled my eyes, and my expression was overwhelming. My brother will always wait for me at home, and I can't abandon my brother. What else? Anything else? I was shocked. How do I remember that was all there was at the time? Also, I love you. I love you too. The training camp lasted for more than a year, and he probably went home for a few days, in the middle before being recalled again. Finally victory is in sight, and there is one last mission, and you can enjoy a month-long vacation. I called and told Webster Burke that he could go home for his birthday this year. I was afraid that I wouldn't be in a hurry when the time came, so I prepared a birthday gift for my brother in advance and asked my colleague to help me send a regular courier to the city. The gifts were a model of the fighter plane I am driving now, a badge for a special pilot, and a small airplane necklace. Although the necklace is issued by the unit, it is exquisitely made. On that day, the sky was blue. After entering the cabin and preparing for the flight, I suddenly remembered the vow of life and death that Webster Burke said at his wedding, and my heart stabbed violently. Adjust your condition and resolutely take off. Brother, I will definitely be able to accompany you for your birthday, this time. The ultra-low altitude flight went very smoothly, and just as it was returning, the air system suddenly failed, and the fighter plane, which had been descending, suddenly accelerated uncontrollably into the sky. After maximum salvage, I was ejected from the capsule. The moment I left the plane, something seemed to rush into my mind, and the two memories were like paper gradually overlapping and covering. This time I managed to get stuck in 4 seconds. When the parachute was fully opened, my body was pulled upwards and my heart, which had been crumbling, finally calmed down. But last time, I missed the best time to get out of the cabin. When I woke up in the hospital, I was thirsty. My body hurts a little, and I can't move even if I want to. I'm thirsty. My eyes widened at the familiar voice. Webster Burke was then seen walking into the room with a kettle. Brother, why are you here? Come to my wife for her birthday. He had lost a lot of weight, and the flesh on his cheeks was a little sunken. I couldn't speak, tears streaming down my face. He smiled and wiped it off with his hand. Crying just after the operation is not good for the eyes. Brother, did I die once before? His fingers suddenly stopped under my eyes, and his shoulders moved imperceptibly. I've got it all figured out. Brother, I'm sorry. I threw myself into his arms, tears soaking his shirt. I can't imagine what my brother's life would have been like since the last time I died. I can't imagine that after I died once, he would agree to let me be a pilot. How he has been scared of me all these years. As long as you can live well. Webster Burke took 2 months off work to stay with me, as a family member of the army, and I was back in the middle of a life of clothes and food. My colleagues envy me for finding a model husband, but what they don't know is that Webster Burke is not only a model husband, but also the best brother in the world. The day before Webster Burke was going home, the two of us were sweaty, but we were still hugging each other, looking at the man with a happy face after being fed in his arms. There is a question that has been lingering in his mind. Brother, how are you doing after I die? He leaned his lips over and kissed me lightly on the tip of my nose. It's okay, I didn't let you wait too long for me. He was indifferent, as if he were telling someone else's story, and I was so shocked by this understatement that I couldn't say a word. I took his hand, skin to skin, and felt the strong heartbeat of the other, as I had been in the coffin in that chamber so many years ago. This time, we are all alive. We will work together for the rest of our lives. Extra, death is not the end. On my 32nd birthday, I went to that hustle and bustle with the people I love the most, in order to be able to string together a few days of annual leave to celebrate Mildred Bernal's birthday. Surgery has been scheduled one after another recently. By the time I dragged my tired body back to the lounge from the operating room, my clothes were completely soaked with sweat. The mobile phone in the cabinet vibrated non-stop, and when I took it out, I saw that 4 were missing. It's all the same number, and the origin is unknown. It's similar to the number Mildred Bernal occasionally calls, but at the moment I have mixed feelings, and my gut tells me who is on the other end of the line. Not her. Looked at the string of numbers and hesitated for a few seconds before connecting the phone. Are you the brother of Comrade Mildred Bernal? My heart pounded. He replied with difficulty. Yes, Comrade Mildred Bernal died in the line of duty. Please pay your respects. The phone slid from his hand to the ground with a crisp sound. But I couldn't hear anything. I'm dreaming. It must be. There were no surgeries and no phone calls. I've been so tired lately. So I've had a dream that looks a lot like reality. And that's it. Mildred Bernal's mission went smoothly, flying over the turquoise sea in her proud carrier-based aircraft. When she called the other day, she patted her chest and promised to accompany me for my birthday this year. I don't know how the next few days were. The dean saw that I was not in the right state, and gave me a few more days off to rest. It wasn't until they retrieved Mildred Bernal's bones that I believed my sister was really gone. They said that she was a national hero, and in order to save the warplane, she postponed the parachute jump, and finally fell into the sea and died. They were going to hold a grand memorial service for him, and they were going to award her a medal. I'm not a good brother because I didn't wait for that grand memorial service for her. While sorting through Mildred Bernal's belongings, I found her suicide note. It reads, Webster Burke. Brother, when you received this letter, I had already become an immortal. Please don't be sad for me. I am proud to sacrifice for the honor of my country, and for the cause I love the most. You're proud of me, too, aren't you? Because our goal is to make the National Navy go deep blue. Brother, thank you for your meticulous care, and care for me over the years. Think about it like this. I am really the happiest person in the world, because my brother is perfect. Well, there's another secret that I decided to take this opportunity to tell you. Brother, I like you. It's a little sudden. Isn't it scared of you? It occurred to me that if I died, you would definitely see my diary, and then you'll find those unseemly, vile crushes. Alas, it's really not easy to say that this thing is not easy to stop and stop. I tried hard, really. Forgive me for the point that I'm a hero, for the point that I'm your sister, for the point that I'm dead. Brother, in the future, you have to go on well, find a girl you love, and join hands for the rest of your life. I wish you peace and success in your life. I'll try to bless you up there. P.S. I'll do my best to keep you from seeing this suicide note, though. Best wishes. Love, Mildred Bernal. I went crazy and found her diary, 13 of them, among all her personal belongings. Looking at the notebooks all over the floor, I laughed out loud, because her diary writing habit is still influenced by me. I didn't expect that after so many years, she was still persistent. The sky was bright and dark. I was filled with joy and sorrow, because all her girlish thoughts are closely related to me, because until she died, I didn't know that she loved me silently as much as I loved her. The last diary entry was written 3 days before her accident. She said she had to follow through on 2 things in her life. One is to make an eagle soaring in the blue sea and blue sky. One is secretly in love with Webster Burke for the rest of his life. I rubbed my astringent eyes. Not a single tear could come out of it. Someone outside the door kept ringing the doorbell. I staggered to my feet, and fell forward uncontrollably as soon as I took a step. After a few falls, I finally crawled to the door, probably because I wasn't in a good state. The courier was scared to take a few steps back as soon as I opened the door. Webster Burke, your delivery, please sign for it. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't even write my name crookedly. Are you okay? Do I need to take you to the hospital? I didn't have the strength, so I waved my hand and closed the door. I sat down slowly against the door, staring at the gift from Mildred Bernal. The box was tightly wrapped, and I struggled to open it with my fingers, and I didn't even realize that I had picked out my nails. Blood dripped on Mildred Bernal's name, as if to reflect her beautiful face. There is also a small box in the box, which is a model of a carrier-based aircraft, the size of a palm, handsome and exquisite. There is also a gold special pilot badge, and a small aircraft necklace. I got up and ate something, and when I had enough energy, I took a shower, shaved my beard, and got new clothes. Looking at myself in the mirror, I feel much more energetic. I wore the necklace around my neck, put the badge in the pocket of my coat, and placed the model of the carrier aircraft in front of my sister's picture. After packing up, I booked a high-speed rail ticket to the city next door. When the taxi arrived at the beach, I glanced at my watch, and it was almost 12 o'clock. Half an hour before my birthday ended, I went to look for her. I don't worry about her being a fairy alone. Hey, she won't want to leave me for the rest of her life. When I opened my eyes again, I was in class. Webster Burke. Are you going to self-study? My roommate reached out and shook it in front of my eyes. I looked at the surgery on the table, and laughed wildly after a trance. I was reborn. The year Mildred Bernal finished his college entrance exam. At the moment she is alive and well, waiting for me at home. I'm going home. With that, I snatched the door out. On the way home, I had thought about my life with her. This time, I'm going to be Mildred Bernal's lover. This time, I must stop her from becoming a pilot. The moment I panted and pushed open the door, I was a little nervous. It was pitch black, and I pushed open the door to Mildred Bernal's bedroom to see her huddled under the covers, shivering, muttering something in her mouth. I leaned my ear over. Brother, I'm here. I'll always be there. The end.